What is going on, everybody? Today we're back on the 99 Mustang. We're going to be doing a few little easy odds and ends to it to kind of get it back together after our broken diff issue. So we're going to get into what I think happened on the diff, get this thing back together and on the ground. Alright, so we got our new drive, not new drive shaft. The Actual Exchange, they're a fellow New Jersey company, awesome to deal with, so check them out if you ever need any drive shaft stuff. But the issue was this diff flange. If you didn't see my last race video, I'll put a tag of it up here as to what happened. But what I now know is that these aluminum diffs were on automatics, 4 cylinders, or the 4-cylinder EcoBoost and the V6s. The cast iron, so you can see now I got a cast diff housing. We're on the manual cars. The differential flange, which here was my issue. Figure out what flange you have. Easiest thing is to just mic it out. This one, for example, we know is the smaller one, which kind of doing this one-handed, but close enough. So that's 4.323 is the smaller one, while the new one, we'll measure this flange because we know it's going to mate up to the other one. So 4.452 about. So it's my understanding now that the 15 to 17 Mustangs with a manual came with the cast iron diff and the larger flange. All the other ones came with the smaller flange, but the 2018 and newer GTs also have the smaller flange. So the flange that's on the new diff in this car is kind of like the outlier, being the bigger one, but that might help you out in the future in case you run into this issue. Alright, so what I think happened, if on the, like I just showed on the aluminum one, the tab broke right about here. So you can see it's still the stock rubber bushing in there, but we have these solid diff bushings on the front. So these solid diff bushings lock in the front of the bushing, but not the rear of the bushing. So let's see if I can do this. So what I think happened, the forces that this car sees, not a ton of power or torque from the engine, because I'm only at about 330 horsepower or so. What I think happened, having that front locked out, you can see we have about a good, 2.5, maybe 3 inches from it being locked out on the front here, but not in the rear. This diff, even though it's sort of locked in, the rear of the bushing can still kind of move, so it's almost giving a little bit of an extra torque leverage out to this tab, which would then kind of make this tab want to twist. I hope that kind of makes sense. Alright, so to make that diff bushing thing make a little more sense, we're going to draw it out here. So let's say this is the tab going up to the differential. Ours broke kind of right about there. Here's the subframe. So the bolt goes through this tab all the way through to the back of the subframe. Here, I'm sorry, it's kind of like a 2-bolt setup, but so the bushing lockouts only kind of do this little front part here, right? And then let's use green. So green will be like the rubber bushing, so that the rubber bushing kind of fills up here, and then through the center is where that bolt goes and threads in here. So the differential, all the weight of this still moving around. The front is locked out, but you can see you have this much extra distance between where the differential interface is with the bushing right about here. So that's kind of why if this differential lockout bushing wasn't here, the whole bushing would kind of just like move together. But since the front is locked but the rear is not, it still allows the bushing to move a little bit, and that little bit of like movement, even though this interface doesn't move because it's bolted together, it will kind of torque this little tab. I hope that kind of all makes sense a little bit. So I think that's kind of why for a road racing situation, go with either no like bushing lockouts, or go with solid bushings, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to swap out to just solid aluminum bushings. What I'm going to do, if you remember way back when I did this swap, I made my own solid bushings that go through here up to the frame. I think what I'm going to do is take these out, drop the subframe, press out the original factory bushing, and just make solid bushings that go all the way through on all 4 points to really lock this thing in there. So I think that's all I'm going to kind of do for the bushings. Right now, I'm just going to put everything back together because I mentioned it in another video. We're moving in a few weeks. I kind of just need to get this thing movable under its own power. We're also taking this thing to the wind tunnel a few weeks after that. So if you want to see this thing in the wind tunnel, hit that subscribe button down below, and also hit that little bell so you get notified when it comes out. So yeah, right now we're just going to kind of get the drive shaft back in. We're going to put antifreeze in it because we're headed into the winter time. Fill the diff with oil. I think that's about it right now. So quick little tip, when you're torquing down your drive shaft bolts, this is how I do it. I just take a screwdriver, put it in the vanes of the rotor in between the brake bracket on both sides, so that way it kind of locks the diff, and then you can torque your bolts without it rotating. Another popular way to do it is you can usually reach up and throw the car into gear, but sometimes the engine's compression isn't enough to keep it from rotating depending on the torque, so that's another option as well. So another fun fact, this cast iron housing, I put it on the scales at the track before I put this whole assembly in the car, weighed 98 pounds, while the aluminum assembly weighed 78 pounds. Now the cast iron assembly was basically dry, while the aluminum one had about 2 quarts of gear oil in it. So the weight difference, at least 20 pounds, but if you subtract that gear oil, I don't know, it might be like in the 16, 17 pound range. So it always stinks having to add weight, but on my car, adding it in the rear isn't the worst thing. Plus ST2, you get a weight, or I guess a horsepower brake at 3,000 pounds. I roll across scales like 2970. So adding those 20 pounds in the rear isn't bad. Gets me real close to that 3,000. If I'm over that 3,000, I get an extra 0.1, which is like, I don't know, it's almost like 10 horsepower. So it's almost worth it to put, you know, 15, 20 pounds in this car, but legally be able to make an extra like 10 horsepower. I hope that all kind of makes sense. Alright, so the drive shaft is in and done. I put some gear oil in the diff. One thing I gotta figure out, if you're watching this and you know the solution, let me know. But this little breather thing is not in the new diff for whatever reason. You can see I kind of tried turning it out. I don't know if it's threaded in there or pressed in. I tried to kind of like get behind it and pull it out. The new diff, you can't see it obviously, but it's smooth, so that's what made me think that it's maybe just like pressed in. If you know the answer to that one, comment below. But what we're going to do now is just fill it up with coolant, actual antifreeze, since we're going to kind of winterize this thing. Season's done for me. But these things, these little magic funnels, these things are probably the best thing I've ever came across to make sure you don't have any like bubbles or anything. So what happens is, when you fill this up, if you have like an air pocket stuck somewhere in your cooling system, run the engine till the thermostat opens and pumps water through the whole engine. Your expansion tank or catch tank, reservoir, whatever you want to call it, should be the highest point. So if you see, this is higher than anything else on the engine, so any air will make it to this. And what happens is once that thermostat opens, cycles water through the whole engine, everything, the air will make it to here and just kind of bleed out the top, and you know, new coolant goes in. So I'll put an Amazon link to them down below. Those things are freaking awesome. I've had that one for years and years now. I've never had any, you know, coolant bubble leak issues using that thing. Alright guys, so there you have it. I know this video wasn't the most exciting, but I kind of tried to show you a few little like tips and tricks of how I do things that hopefully you might find useful. So that's where we're going to wrap this one up. As always, thanks for hanging out. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.